Hi, this is April Lammy, and I chose Operationalizing Cultural Relevant Pedagogy, a synthesis of classroom-based research. Now, this sounds really complicated, but it isn't, and it's broken down in a really unique way that I think that we'll all be able to learn a lot. So what does this really mean for us as teachers? So it's to be able to teach in a cultural, relevant, responsive way, or take into consideration and use knowledge about social, cultural, and language background of our students in order for our students to experience school success. So we know that school environment and enrollment is increasing with the number of students from diverse cultural groups. So what these authors did was they looked at 45 different classroom-based research studies from 1995 to 2013 when this was published. They also then took the theoretical framework from Latson Billing to help them organize their finding. Their goal is to give us as teacher candidates and eventually teachers concrete and illustrative examples on how to approach cultural relevant teaching. So they came up with 3 central pedagogies. High expectation, which is really about academic success for all our students. Cultural competence, which is the formation of a positive cultural identity for each of our students. And lastly, critical consciousness, which is a way to critique and interpret current and historical social inequities. So if we take a look at our first pedagogy of high expectation, they've broken it down into 5 different subset groups to help us, just break it down a little bit more. So the first one is modeling, scaffolding, and clarification of the challenging curriculum. And this is really encouraging students to collaborate with each other, for us to model to the students, and to have students work one-on-one with each other. It's about having us have a clear outline expectation and closely monitoring the students' learning. When we're looking at student strength as an instructional starting point, we really want to have planned activities that allow students to have a positive introduction to the subject matter before moving on to the more challenging part of the subject matter. Now, while we're investing in taking personal responsibility for our students' success, it's about us taking our own time for the students. So being there for them before or after school, during our planning period. It's also about using our personal time for professional development so we can become more culturally relevant. We want to communicate that we are determined to help them pass, and once they reach those goals, we really want to be able to celebrate their success with them. Creating and nurturing cooperative environments is really just in creating an environment in which student feels motivated to work and where they have a sense of belonging. And high behavioral expectations is about classroom behavior. So we really need to make sure that the rules and expectations are known and have a structured routine. This way the energy is focused on the learning environment and not so much the behavioral environment. As we look at critical competence, this is where we want to create a student's connection and relationship between their home and community culture and their school culture. So with reshaping the prescribed curriculum, it's connecting all students' identity and making learning more relevant to them. So this can be an example of creating a virtual museum. So asking students to bring family artifacts in to create a museum display, and then taking digital images of them and creating a digital museum with them. It's also about attending cultural events or having non-English alphabets, statements, or poems hanging in our wall. When we are building on students' funds of knowledge, this is for us to be able to take time out of our day to talk individually with as many students about non-academic matters. We can also do home visits at the beginning of the year, or even have them write stories about themselves. We then take this information and we want to work to build bridges between that information and the curriculum, creating an academic success for them. So encouraging relationships between school and community is really what the Venn diagram shows. We have our 3 circles of school, family, and community, and in the middle is where we have the student learning. So we want to invite families and community members to participate in the day-to-day workings of the school. And again, home visits is something we can do. And we want to invite them in to share relevant experiences with the students. So as we look at critical consciousness, Latson Billing stated, not only must teachers encourage academic success and cultural competence, They must also help students to recognize, understand, and critique current social inequities. So how do we help our students do this? Well, first with critical literacy, this is allowing students to discuss controversial topics or asking students to take a critical or political view about the text. And we want to make sure that we provide critical thinking prompts before reading the text. When we're engaging students in social justice work, this is using real-life experiences as teaching permits or providing real services to the community, such as active participant in democracy, and developing awareness about social and economical marginalized group in their area. Now, making explicit the power of dynamics of mainstream society is probably the most difficult of all these pedagogies that we've been discussing. So what this really means is teachers must make explicit the dynamics of mainstream society to those students from cultures outside the mainstream, while simultaneously validating the unique cultures and heritage of their students. So now we want to share the power in the classroom, and this is allowing students to make important decisions regarding classroom policy. For example, a first grade classroom came together at the beginning of the year, and they shared their expectations as a group for what they wanted their classroom to look like and their classroom environment to look like over the next year. And then each student signed it as a promise that they would uphold those values that they worked on as a group. It's also about bringing culture into the classroom and have students having a choice in their academic success and what they learn. Now, this is not a one-size-fits-all, and the research review did not fully address how teachers successfully enacted culturally relevant pedagogy when they worked with a variety of populations. So each one of these had a specific diverse group that they were working with. And this also clashes with the traditional ways in which education is carried out in our society. And while these are challenges, they express and encourage that they don't want this to be deterrent, because they feel, and I think agree, that each one of these is an important step in learning a little bit more about our students and bringing each student's culture into the classroom and expanding the knowledge of each student in that room. I really enjoyed this article, and I hope you take time to read it because it is really good, and thank you for listening.